Hello, welcome to another episode of the Loving God with All Your Mind series. This is number 7. And if you're interested in the earlier ones, at the end of the video, maybe I'll put a list of the previous topics, maybe some links, so you can go back and listen to some of those if they look like they might be something beneficial for you. This time, and I'm here again in the Abraham room. Those of you who've been here know exactly where I am, in the corner. And so, here we go with the title, Job's Wise. That's a little hard to almost to say, and you have to almost see it written to understand what it is exactly I'm saying, Job's Wise. But obviously, we're dealing with the whole issue of loving God with all your mind, and specifically, today, when you're going through mind-boggling, just life-shattering events that may not be as dramatic as Job's, but they fill your horizon completely, whether in sheer pain or fear or anguish, concern for others, for yourself, for everyone involved. Yeah, I have any number of friends who are in a situation or have been in a situation like this. And though they may not compare themselves with Job's particular case, the issue is the same: how to love God with all your mind when you're going through these kinds of things. The book of Job is an amazing book for that reason. I want to again read our core verse here, which is Matthew 22:37. Jesus said unto him, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind." How do you love God with all your mind when something happens like what happened to Job? It's interesting in the book of Job, if you've read it, and many of you have read it like I have, dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of times. It's interesting that at the end, God makes no apologies. Of course, how could he? But still, we still need to think about it. God makes no apologies for how he dealt with Job, both in the sending of these tremendous events, but also in the way he handled Job through it and after it. And so, very important to remember that. The battle was not only physical, it was physical. It ended up being, at first it was emotional, mental, but then it was add the physical part of that incredible suffering to it. So the battle was in his mind. He lost his animals, he lost his servants, he lost his kids, all of his children, and then his health and stayed in extreme pain. So what was his response to this tornado in his brain, accompanied with all of this painful stuff? His response was, why? Why, Lord? And my goodness, we can understand that. All of us have been, at some point or another, in some kind of situation where it was, why, Lord? Why me? Why them? Why us? Why this? So it's a big deal. And so what I want to do is, I want to look at Job quickly in this way. This is what we're going to do. We're going to see his response, and then we're going to go through Job's responses to his friends. And we'll do it by simply looking at the ways Job responds to them, and how Job is continually mentioning the whole issue of his mind, of his thinking, of his arguments, of the plan that he has. And then we'll go on through the end to where God responds to him. So first off, in chapter 3, and I'll use the Bible here. Later I'll just read them from my notes because it'll be much faster. Job says in chapter 3, verse 11, "Why died I not from the womb? Why," implied, "did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? Why did the knees prevent me? Or why the breasts that I should suck? Down in verse 20, wherefore, or why, is light given to him that is in misery? And implied, why is life given unto him, or unto him who is bitter in soul? Why? Verse 23, why is light given to a man whose way is hid, and whom God hath hedged in? So his response is, why, Lord? Why? Why all of this? And of course, we understand his question. Yeah, my goodness, why, Lord? And we have the sort of the full story. At least we can look back on it. Not with the full story, but with a lot more information than Job had. So then his three friends start giving these discourses, which aren't very helpful. And we're not going to look at them. But interestingly enough, none of them refer, at least that I could see in a quick reading, none of them refer at all to thinking or the mind, the processes. They basically jump over that, mostly. But Job doesn't. And so in Job, in chapter 6, as he's answering Eliphaz, he says, and so I'm going to go through these passages rapidly through the book just to show you that Job is very conscious that this is going on in the mind. This is a battle of his mind. Teach me, and I will hold my tongue, and cause me to understand where I have erred. How forcible are right words, but what doth your arguing reprove? Arguing with the mind. And then after Bildad in chapter 9, he says, how much less shall I answer him, and choose my words to reason with him? I've got to figure out how I'm going to think this thing through. Then after Zophar in chapter 12, he says, no doubt, but ye are the people, and wisdom shall die with you. Bit of sarcasm there. But I have understanding as well as you. I am not inferior to you. Yea, who knoweth not such things as these? So this battle in Job's mind continues in chapter 12. Doth not the ear try words? Talking about the thinking process. Chapter 13, lo, mine eye hath seen all this, mine ear hath heard and understood it. I'm processing all of this information and this experience. Chapter 13, hear now my reasoning, and hearken to the pleadings of my lips. Listen to my reasoning. And they would not, his friends. Chapter 13 again, hear diligently my speech. Hear diligently. Think about what I'm saying. And my declaration with your ears. And then again, after Zophar in chapter 21, shall any teach God knowledge? He understands where his thinking comes from, where knowledge comes from. Later on in the same chapter, behold, I know your thoughts and the devices which ye wrongfully imagine against me. Notice how thick that is with the mind and using it. I know your thoughts and the devices which ye wrongfully imagine against me. And then again after Eliphaz in chapter 23. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come even to his seat. I would order my cause before him. Job is struggling in his mind. I wish, he thinks, that I could have that audience with him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would know the words which he would answer me and understand what he would say unto me. Well, God has given us this amazing mind to think through and reason through events in life, our walk with him, and our relationship with those around us. After Bildad, in chapter 28, says, but where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? How many questions he has. Later on, Whence then cometh wisdom? And where is the place of understanding? He repeats himself. I don't know. I have more questions than answers for sure. Well, then ends the conversation with the three friends. None of his friends' arguments have convinced him or helped him in the least. So then Elihu comes in. And so Elihu says in chapter 35, but none saith, where is God my maker, who giveth songs in the night, who teacheth us more than the beasts of the earth? We are superior to them. We can be taught. Where is he? And maketh us wiser than the fowls of heaven. Elihu tried a new approach, a different approach than the first three, and he was somewhat kinder, but in the end added nothing. So then we come to the Lord himself answering Job. And this is obviously where we want to go. This is where we want to study to see what God says. And basically, in these chapters, 38, 39, 41, basically God is saying, what do you know? What do you know, Job? Which is somewhat of an odd kind of response. But in chapter 38, who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? What do you know? Gird up now thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer me. Then answer thou me. Declare if thou hast understanding. He's questioning his level of understanding. Who hath laid the measures thereof? If thou knowest. Who hath stretched the line upon it? Verse 18. Hast thou perceived the breadth of the earth? Declare it if thou knowest it at all. Verse 20 and 21. That thou shouldest take it to the bound thereof, and that thou shouldest know the past of the house thereof. Knowest thou it because thou wast then born? So he's questioning his knowledge. Very interesting. Verse 33. Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? Verse 36. Who hath put wisdom in the inward parts? Or who hath given understanding to the heart? Chapter 39. Knowest thou the time when the wild goats of the rock bring forth? Canst thou mark when the hinds do calve? Canst thou number the months that they fulfill? Or knowest thou the time when they bring forth? And so God goes into this matter of his knowledge. And so when Job responds in chapter 42, notice Job gets it. He definitely does. So then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that thou canst do everything, and that no thought can be withholden from thee. Who is he that hideth counsel without knowledge? Therefore have I uttered that I understood not, things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. So notice how Job responds to God, who says, Job, you really don't know what's going on. Your knowledge is very, very limited. And he doesn't really give him answers about what happened. But Job gets it. And he says, you're right. I don't know anything. And so then, as you well know, he goes on to say in verse 6, wherefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes. God reveals himself to Job. Instantly, Job's questions are gone, so to speak. And God talks to Job and says, what do you think you know? Ultimately, you don't know almost anything, only what I've allowed you to understand. Okay, so let's wrap it up. Trying to pull all this together. Job's response seems to focus on how little Job actually knew. There was much more going on here than he could ever understand. And we can't charge God with being callous towards Job's feelings. No, the fact is, Job had no idea what was going on, and God was not going to explain it all to him. Wow. That is a big lesson for Job and for us. God really did love Job. And as soon as the battle was over, he gave him such blessing, he so fully restored him that it seems like Job had no regrets at all. God loved him and God cared for him. But he made him go through that. Job thought he had an argument, but he really didn't. He was using his mind, but he was questioning God too much. With all of the reason that we see he had, but in the end, he was not right. Job's final response, however, here was full of doctrine. He talks about the omnipotence of God, about his sovereign will, and then he recognized that he simply could not understand what was too far above his knowledge or his capacity for understanding. To recognize that, you know what? Lord, I believe you. I can't understand it. I can't handle it. So I will leave it with you. God did not give him answers, but he told him how to think. He said, I know what I'm doing, and you must trust me in that. Wisdom, therefore, is understanding that we will not understand everything that happens. And to love God with all our minds is therefore to understand and accept that we will not understand everything that happens to us. No matter how powerfully huge and painful and puzzling it is. We will not understand it all. God will not reveal to us his reasons. But to love him with our mind is to say, Lord, I leave it with you. Because you do know what you're doing. So the big question is, can we do this? Can we do this? I think it's a healthy thing to read Job over and over again and to review this process, this thinking. So I trust that that'll help you, especially if you're going through an extremely difficult moment now, to trust God, believe in him with your mind, love him, and let him do his will in your life, me and my life. He knows what he's doing. Okay, God bless you. Have a good day.